As we told you earlier, President Obama has appointed Elizabeth Warren to set up the new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. In her new advisory role, she'll become the government's #1 consumer watchdog. Our Hans Nichols caught up with Warren to talk about whether banks should be worried about her new role.
It's a new day. And look, I get the point. They want to understand exactly what we have in mind for this new consumer agency. For those who figured out how to make a lot of profits off tricking people and trapping people, and they don't really know how much something costs until it reaches up and bites them, this agency is going to be a problem for them in the direction it heads in. But for those who are really committed to their customers, for those who add value and offer a service at a price that's visible to the customer, I actually think this is a good day for them, because it's going to make not just their relationships with their customers, I think, better and bring some more credibility to it. I think it's actually going to make their competitive position in the marketplace better.
You say it's a new day. Have you reached out to anyone on Wall Street since the president nominated you there in the Rose Garden?
Yes, I have.
Can you who you talk to?
Nah, I don't want to name names because I'm not sure. I don't want to embarrass anybody at this point. But I've had some really good conversations today. And I should start by saying this isn't the first time we've done a little reaching out. Ultimately, I think some of us want to get to the same place. If the American family is economically destabilized, if they're borrowing money that they just really can't pay, this isn't going to work for anybody. We can't rebuild this economy, and that's not good for the banks, and it's not good for the families. We just got to get to the same place.
So a little bit of reaching out, no names. Do you have more reaching out to do?
You bet. I mean, of course I have more reaching out to do. They're not the people I've been hanging out with for a long, long time. So sure, I've got to reach out. And I've got to reach out not just because I've got to be gracious. I've got to reach out because I've got to learn. And I want to learn. I don't want to sit around and say, oh, I have a great idea. Let's craft the solution over here, and I'll come in and announce it to the rest of you guys. I want to be able to invite people in because I want to get it right. Yeah. And that means people who already understand it.
You sound like the Elizabeth Warren who is the consumer advocate throughout this entire process wants to take a few things back. Are there anything you want to take back, or do you this is general just opening up?
No. Okay. I don't think there's anything I need to take back on this. Look, I've been talking about this consumer agency, and what's the job before it's the law? It's to explain why it's needed. And when you explain why it's needed, what you do is you get out there and talk about what's wrong. You talk about where families have been tricked, you talk about where they've been trapped, you talk about long agreements and things that people didn't understand and how they made mistakes. That's what you talk about, because that's why there's a need for the law. Now we've got it. The law's in place, the tools are laid on the table. What that means is we move to the new phase, and that's how do you pick up these tools in order to make this market work better.
There's another phase after that, and that's when it'll actually be moved to the Federal Reserve. Do you still want to be director?
What I want to do right now is survive next week and start this thing moving.
Well, are you ruling yourself out then to being director?
I'm not looking forward. The president and I, look, if I were looking for a nomination, the time for me to say that was in the conversations I've had with the president. We talked about nomination over the past several weeks.
Were you worried about getting confirmed in the Senate?
No.
No cause for concern about?
Look, maybe you tell me I should be worried. I'm not a political person, and I should make this clear. I never walked away from a fight in my life. You can ask my 3 older brothers about that. It didn't bother me to be the littlest one. I'm ready. But the point is, every day spent fighting is a day not spent working to get the agency up and running. What it would really take, it would end up delaying this agency by a year. And there's no point in that over titles.
All right, for more on Elizabeth Warren's appointment, we bring in the man who just interviewed her and did a fantastic job, I should add, as well, Hans Nichols. Hans, I understand you also asked her about her dual reporting role. She is going to have to answer to both the president and to the Treasury Secretary. How does she look forward to dealing with that?
Well, her real master, Matt, as she said, is the American people. She doesn't see this as serving two masters, that she sees as everyone's interest aligned and that everyone will be happy and there won't be any conflicts. And she never could possibly envision a time where she would have to go around the Geithner to go directly to the president. Unclear whether or not that will be true. There will be some difficult decisions that this agency, that she makes when she sets up this agency over the next few months. You know, we just heard her say that I'm not a political person and I've never backed away from a fight. You can ask my older brothers about that. I think watching her in Washington for the last year, at least one of those statements is true, and that is she doesn't back down from a fight. I'm not so sure that she's not a political person. She showed some pretty smooth moves, especially in jamming Dodd when it looked like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau wouldn't end up in the final package. Somehow she got that in. This bill, the final package, looks a lot more like what she wanted than anyone would have expected at the beginning of this. So don't discount Elizabeth Warren. I think that's the message Chris Dodd might take, certainly Senate Republicans, and perhaps Secretary Geithner now, who is technically her boss, but always knows that she can go around him.
Listen, obviously, Hans, members of the public have been clamoring to see her as the boss of this agency. She's not going to get there, at least not immediately. How much weight and power is she ultimately going to have over the shaping of it?
I think she'll have quite a bit in terms of the day-to-day, who she meets with, what sort of regulations are going to be put forth. But on the meta question, and that is who will finally run this, if it doesn't look like you're actually going to be the enforcer when this does move, this bureau moves from Treasury over to the Federal Reserve, if you're not going to be the enforcer, if you're not going to be there in charge, you're just a short timer. And it's unclear, Matt, whether or not you really have the power if you're just there for a short period of time, and whether or not people think that they can go bypass you and that ultimately you won't be running the show.
All right. Hey, Hans, thanks so much for joining us. Hans Nichols there from Washington with the latest on Elizabeth Warren.